Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a bit of a shortcut. We want you to feel really well informed about something absolutely fundamental.
Yeah, the chemistry of life itself, the stuff that surrounds us, but also, quite literally, the stuff that makes us up.
Exactly. We're diving into the essential building blocks, the atoms, the molecules, the reactions that, well, they underpin everything
Yeah.
from the smallest cell in your body.
To entire ecosystems.
Yeah,
We're going to pull out the key ideas from some foundational biology work. The goal isn't just to know what matter is made of,
right.
but why these chemical rules are so vital for life here on Earth.
Yeah.
How they impact our environment, our health, everything.
So if you've ever looked at a spider on a pond and thought, how does it do that? Or maybe wondered why your blood pH stays so constant,
Or even how PET scans work, those amazing medical imaging tools.
then you're definitely in the right place. Okay, let's unpack this chemistry. So to really grasp the big picture of life, we need to start small, like really small. What is matter fundamentally? How do we break it down?
Well, simply put, matter is just anything that takes up space and has mass.
Right.
Pretty straightforward, right?
Right.
And it's all made of elements. Think of elements as the pure ingredients, substances that you can't break down any further by normal chemical reactions. Gold, oxygen, carbon. Those are elements.
92 of them occur naturally,
Exactly. Each with its own unique symbol, its own identity.
and then we start combining them.
Precisely. When you take two or more different elements and combine them in a fixed ratio, you get a compound. And here's where it gets really cool.
Okay.
Compounds have what scientists call emergent properties. This means their characteristics are often completely different from the elements they're made from.
How so? Give us an example.
Okay, take sodium. It's a metal, pretty reactive actually, and chlorine. That's a poisonous gas. Nasty stuff.
Yeah, definitely don't want to mix those.
But combine them chemically in a 1-to-1 ratio, non and Cl. You get sodium chloride, table salt, something you can eat.
Wow. That is an emergent property. From dangerous elements to seasoning.
It's amazing, isn't it? The combination creates something entirely new.
So which elements are the crucial ones for life? For us?
Well, out of those 92 natural ones, only about maybe 20 to 25% are actually essential for life. Humans need 25. Plants actually need a few less, around 17.
And are there main players?
Oh, definitely. There are the big four: oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. They make up about 96% of all living matter. Just four elements.
96%. That's huge.
It is. The remaining 4% includes things like calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur. Still essential, but in smaller amounts.
And then there are the trace elements I've heard about, needed in tiny amounts.
Yes, exactly. Required in really minute quantities. Iron, for example, is needed by pretty much all life forms, but some are more specific.
Like iodine.
Iodine's a great example. Vertebrates, like us, need it for thyroid hormones. We only need about 0.15 milligrams a day, tiny. But if you don't get enough...
Yeah, goiter, that swelling in the neck.
That's right, the thyroid gland enlarges. Eating things like seafood or using iodized salt helps prevent that. A tiny amount makes a huge difference.
It really connects the chemistry to health. What about elements that are normally toxic? Can life adapt?
That's a fascinating question, and it really highlights evolution in action. The answer is yes, some species have adapted.
Really?
Yeah, the source mentions sunflowers. They can actually absorb lead and zinc from the soil at levels that would kill most other organisms.
Sunflowers, wow.
Incredible, right? Scientists even use them after Hurricane Katrina to help clean up contaminated soil. It suggests that over time, some ancestral sunflowers developed a tolerance, and natural selection favored them. They survived and reproduced where others couldn't.
Evolution working even at the chemical tolerance level. Amazing.
Okay, so elements are the building blocks, but what are they made of? Atoms, right? Atoms, yes. The smallest unit of an element that still has the properties of that element. They are incredibly tiny.
And inside the atom?
Inside, you've got subatomic particles, protons, which have a positive charge, and neutrons, which have no charge. They're neutral.
Okay.
Both protons and neutrons are packed really tightly together in the center, the core, which we call the atomic nucleus.
And the electrons, where are they?
Electrons have a negative charge, and they move incredibly rapidly around the nucleus. They form a sort of cloud of negative charge.
So they're not orbiting like planets.
Not really like planets in fixed orbits, no. It's
Yeah.
more like a probability cloud. But it's the attraction between the positive nucleus and these negative electrons that holds the atom together.
And what about their mass?
Protons and neutrons have almost the same mass, very small, about 1 Dalton each. Electrons are much lighter, so light that we usually ignore their mass when calculating the atom's total mass.
So how do we tell atoms of different elements apart? You mentioned protons before.
That's the key.
Mm.
The atomic number. It's simply the number of protons in the nucleus. It's unique for each element. 6 protons, it's always carbon. 7 protons, always nitrogen.
And for a neutral atom?
For a neutral atom, the number of electrons equals the number of protons. So the positive and negative charges balance out.
Okay. And mass number?
Mass number is just the total number of protons plus neutrons in the nucleus.
Got it. Now, what about isotopes?
Isotopes. They're versions of the same element. They have the same number of protons, that's what defines the element, but they have different number of neutrons.
So they have different masses.
Exactly. Think of carbon. Most carbon is carbon-12, meaning 6 protons and 6 neutrons. But there's also carbon-13, 6 protons, 7 neutrons, and carbon-14, 6 protons, 8 neutrons.
But they still act like carbon chemically.
Yes, chemically they behave pretty much identically because they have the same number of electrons, especially the outer ones, which determine chemical behavior.
I know some isotopes are radioactive. What's going on there?
A radioactive isotope has an unstable nucleus. It tends to decay spontaneously, giving off particles and energy.
And this decay can change the element.
It can, yes. When carbon-14 decays, it actually becomes nitrogen-14, but this instability is incredibly useful. Well, their decay happens at a predictable rate, so we use radioactive isotopes, like carbon-14, for dating fossils, figuring out how old they are.
Radiocarbon dating, right.
Exactly. And in biology and medicine, they're used as tracers, because cells treat radioactive isotopes just like the normal ones.
You can follow them.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You can label molecules with them and track where they go in a metabolic process. And in medicine, think PT scans.
Positron emission tomography.
Right. They use radioactive tracers that accumulate in certain tissues, like rapidly growing cancers, and the scanner detects the energy released as they decay. It gives doctors a picture of metabolic activity.
Incredible application of basic atomic structure. So the nucleus defines the element, but you mentioned electrons determine chemical behavior. What about their energy?
Right. Electrons have potential energy because of their position relative to the nucleus. It's a bit like a ball on a staircase.
What do you mean?
An electron can only exist at certain energy levels, called electron shells, not in between. The farther a shell is from the positive nucleus, the higher the potential energy of the electrons in that shell.
Like higher steps on the staircase have more potential energy?
Exactly. An electron can absorb energy and jump to a higher shell farther from the nucleus. When it loses energy, it falls back to a lower shell closer to the nucleus, and that lost energy is often released as light.
And this directly relates to how atoms interact.
Absolutely. An atom's chemical behavior is mainly determined by the electrons in its outermost shell. We call this the valence shell, and the electrons in it are valence electrons.
Valence electrons. Okay.
Atoms with the same number of valence electrons tend to have similar chemical properties. They behave alike in reactions.
And if that outer shell is full?
If the valence shell is completely full, like in helium or neon, the atom is very stable. It's inert, meaning it doesn't readily react chemically. It doesn't need to gain, lose, or share electrons.
But most atoms don't have full outer shells.
Correct. Most atoms have incomplete valence shells, and this makes them reactive. They have this tendency, this drive, to interact with other atoms in ways that will complete their valence shell.
And that leads us to chemical bonds. Atoms trying to fill their shells.
Precisely. That drive to achieve a full valence shell is what leads to chemical bonding, the attractions that hold atoms together to form molecules and compounds.
What are the main types of bonds we see in biology?
The strongest bonds, the ones that really hold molecules together, are covalent bonds and, in certain conditions, ionic bonds.
Okay, let's start with covalent bonds. What are they?
A covalent bond is formed when two atoms share one or more pairs of valence electrons.
Sharing electrons fills their shells.
Yes. Take two hydrogen atoms. Each has one electron in its first shell, which only holds two. If they share their electrons, they each effectively have access to two electrons, filling their shell. That forms an H2 molecule.
And they can share more than one pair.
They can. Atoms can form single bonds, sharing one pair, double bonds, sharing two pairs, like oxygen, OO, or even triple bonds. The number of covalent bonds an atom typically forms is called its valence. Hydrogen has a valence of 1, oxygen 2, nitrogen 3, and carbon.
Carbon is 4, right? That's why it's so versatile in organic molecules.
Exactly. Carbon's valence of 4 allows it to form the backbone of complex biological molecules.
Now, you mentioned sharing. Is the sharing always equal?
Good question. No, it's not always equal. It depends on something called electronegativity.
Electronegativity.
It's basically a measure of how strongly an atom attracts shared electrons in a covalent bond.
So if two atoms have similar electronegativity,
Then they pull on the electrons about equally. The electrons are shared evenly, and you get a non-polar covalent bond like an H2 or O2.
but if one atom pulls harder,
If one atom is significantly more electronegative, it pulls the shared electrons more toward itself. This creates a polar covalent bond.
polar, meaning it has poles,
Mm.
like positive and negative ends.
Sort of, yeah. The electrons spend more time near the more electronegative atom, giving it a partial negative charge. The other atoms get a partial positive charge. Water, H2O, is the classic example. Oxygen is much more electronegative than hydrogen.
Ah, okay. So oxygen pulls the electrons, gets a partial negative charge, and the hydrogens get partial positive charges.
Exactly. And this polarity is key to many of water's unique properties, which we'll definitely get to.
Right, so that's covalent sharing. What about the other strong bond type, ionic bonds?
Ionic bonds happen when the electronegativity difference between two atoms is so large that one atom actually strips one or more electrons completely away from the other atom.
It doesn't just share unequally, it takes them.
It takes them. This transfer of electrons creates ions. The atom that lost an electron becomes positively charged, a catechation. The atom that gained an electron becomes negatively charged, an anion.
And the ionic bond.
It's the electrostatic attraction between these oppositely charged ions. Cation attracts anion. Think sodium and chlorine again. Sodium, low electronegativity, readily gives up its valence electron to chlorine, high electronegativity.
Forming Na plus and Cl.
Right. And these ions then attract each other very strongly to form sodium chloride, NaCl, or table salt.
So you said earlier salt isn't really a molecule like water is.
Not in the same sense. Ionic compounds like salt don't typically form discrete molecules in the solid state. Instead, they form a crystal lattice, a highly ordered three-dimensional array of cations and anions packed together. The formula NaCl just tells you the ratio is 1:1.
And you also mentioned their strength depends on the environment.
Yes. Ionic bonds are very strong when the compound is dry in that crystal form, but they become much weaker when dissolved in water.
Why is that useful?
Well, think about medications. Many drugs are prepared as salts. They're stable as dry powders or pills. But when you take them, they dissolve easily in the water in your body, allowing the drug ions to become available and do their job.
Clever. Okay, so covalent and ionic are the strong bonds. Are there weaker interactions that are still important?
Oh, absolutely crucial. Weak chemical interactions are everywhere in biology. Individually, they're easily broken, but collectively, they're very important.
For what kinds of things?
They help stabilize the large, complex shapes of biological molecules like proteins and DNA. They also allow molecules to interact temporarily to bind and then release, which is essential for so many cellular processes.
What are some examples?
Hydrogen bonds are a major one. We mentioned water's polarity, the partial positive hydrogens and partial negative oxygen. A hydrogen bond is the attraction between a partially positive hydrogen atom on one molecule and a nearby electronegative atom, usually oxygen or nitrogen, on another molecule.
So water molecules form hydrogen bonds with each other.
Constantly. It's key to almost everything about water. Another type is van der Waals interactions.
Van der Waals. Sounds complicated.
They're actually caused by something quite simple. Electrons are always moving, right? Just by chance, they might briefly accumulate in one part of a molecule. This creates temporary, fleeting, positive and negative hotspots.
And these temporary spots attract.
Exactly. If molecules are very close together, these transient positive and negative regions can create weak attractions. They're individually very weak, but if you have many of them over a large surface area.
Like the gecko's foot.
Perfect example. Geckos can walk up walls because the microscopic hairs on their feet create an enormous surface area, allowing for countless van der Waals interactions with the wall surface, enough collective weak forces to hold the gecko up.
It all comes down to the cumulative effect. It sounds like the shape of a molecule is incredibly important too.
Critical. Absolutely critical. A molecule's specific three-dimensional shape determines its function. Biological molecules often recognize and interact with each other based on shape complementarity, like a key fitting into a lock.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about opiates, like morphine. They relieve pain. Our bodies naturally produce molecules called endorphins that also relieve pain by binding to specific receptor proteins on brain cells.
Okay.
Morphine works because its shape is very similar to the shape of endorphins. It can fit into the same receptors on the brain cells and trigger the same pain-dulling response.
So the similar shape leads to a similar function, even though the molecules are different.
Precisely. It's a powerful illustration of the structure-function relationship in biology, right down to the molecular level.
Okay, so we have atoms, bonding, shapes. What happens when these bonds are actually made or broken?
That's a chemical reaction. It's the process where chemical bonds are formed or broken, leading to a transformation of matter, changing reactants into products.
Reactants become products.
Right. For example, hydrogen gas, H2, and oxygen gas, O2, are reactants. When they react, bonds break and new bonds form to create water, H2O, the product.
And atoms aren't lost or gained.
No, that's fundamental. Matter is conserved. Chemical reactions just rearrange the atoms. You have the same number and types of atoms at the end as you did at the beginning, just combined differently.
What's a really major biological example of this?
Photosynthesis is probably the most important one for life on Earth. Plants take carbon dioxide, CO2, and water, H2O.
The reactant.
And using energy from sunlight, they rearrange those atoms to make glucose, a sugar, C6H12O6, and oxygen, O2.
The products we need to survive.
Exactly, food and air,
Mm-hmm.
basically, all from rearranging atoms in CO2 and water. It's an incredible chemical transformation powering ecosystems.
Are reactions like photosynthesis always just one-way streets?
Theoretically, no.
Yeah.
All chemical reactions are reversible, at least to some extent. The products can react to reform the original reactants.
So it can go both ways.
Yes. Often one direction is favored, but the reverse reaction is always possible. This leads to the idea of chemical equilibrium.
Equilibrium, meaning balanced.
Right. It's a point where the rate of the forward reaction equals the rate of the reverse reaction. It doesn't mean the reactions stop. They're still happening, but the overall concentrations of reactants and products aren't changing anymore. It's a dynamic balance.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, water. You've hinted it's special because of its polarity and hydrogen bonding. Let's dive into why it's so crucial for life.
Right. Water is truly the star molecule for life as we know it. Its unique properties all stem from the interactions between those polar water molecules, primarily through hydrogen bonding.
Even though the bonds break and reform constantly?
Yes, even though individual hydrogen bonds are fleeting in liquid water, at any given moment, a huge number of water molecules are bonded to their neighbors. This collective hydrogen bonding leads to 4 key properties that are essential for life.
Okay, property number 1.
Cohesive behavior. Cohesion is just water molecules sticking to each other because of hydrogen bonds.
How does that help life?
Think about plants. Water needs to get from the roots all the way up to the leaves, sometimes hundreds of feet high, as water evaporates from the leaves.
The hydrogen bonds pull the next water molecule up?
Exactly. It creates a continuous column of water pulled upwards. It's like a chain. Adhesion, which is water sticking to other polar surfaces, like the cell walls and the plant's water-conducting tubes, also helps counteract gravity.
Cohesion and adhesion working together. And this relates to surface tension, the spider walking on water thing.
Yes. Surface tension is a measure of how difficult it is to break the surface of a liquid. Water has unusually high surface tension, again because of hydrogen bonding.
How does that work?
Molecules at the surface are hydrogen bonded to the ones below and beside them, but not to the air above. This pulls the surface molecules closer together, creating a sort of invisible skin on the water.
Strong enough for a spider.
Strong enough for some insects and spiders, yeah.
Okay, second property. Temperature moderation.
Water is amazing at moderating temperature. It has a very high specific heat.
Specific heat.
That means it takes a lot of heat energy to raise the temperature of water by just a little bit. Conversely, water has to lose a lot of heat for its temperature to drop.
Why? Is it the hydrogen bonds again?
It is. When you add heat to water, a lot of that energy goes into breaking hydrogen bonds first before the water molecules themselves can start moving faster, which is what temperature measures the average kinetic energy.
So the bonds absorb the heat initially.
They act like a buffer, yeah.
Yeah.
And when water cools, forming more hydrogen bonds releases a significant amount of heat.
How does this help life on a larger scale?
Think about coastal climates. Large bodies of water absorb huge amounts of heat from the sun during the day and summer, keeping the nearby land cooler. Then they release that heat slowly at night and in winter, warming the air. It moderates temperature swings.
And for organisms?
Oceans stay relatively stable in temperature, which is great for marine life.
Ah.
And since organisms are mostly water themselves, this high specific heat helps us resist changes in our own internal body temperature.
Right, and evaporative cooling. Sweating.
That's related. Water also has a high heat of vaporization. It takes a lot of energy to turn liquid water into water vapor or gas.
Why?
Again, Those hydrogen bonds have to be broken for the molecules to escape into the air. The molecules that evaporate are the ones with the most kinetic energy, the hottest ones.
So when they leave, the surface left behind is cooler.
Exactly. That's how sweating cools your body. As sweat evaporates from your skin, it takes heat with it. Plants use the same principle to cool their leaves in the sun.
Amazing. Okay, third property, ice floats. This seems counterintuitive. Most things get denser when they freeze.
Water is very unusual in this respect. As water cools below 4 degrees Celsius, it actually starts to expand. By the time it freezes at 0 degrees Celsius, the molecules lock into a crystal lattice.
A crystal.
Yes, where each water molecule is hydrogen bonded to exactly 4 other molecules in a fixed, spacious arrangement. These bonds hold the molecules farther apart than they are in liquid water.
So the same mass takes up more space, making it less dense.
Precisely. Ice is about 10% less dense than liquid water at 4 degrees C, which is why it floats.
And why is that so crucial for life?
Imagine if ice sank. Ponds, lakes, even oceans would freeze solid from the bottom up in winter. Life couldn't survive that.
But because ice floats.
It forms an insulating layer on top, protecting the liquid water underneath from the colder air. This allows aquatic life, fish, plants, everything to survive through the winter beneath the ice, like those krill you see under Arctic ice sheets.
It's a planetary life support feature, but this is also affected by climate change.
Profoundly. Global warming means Arctic air temperatures are rising. Ice is forming later in the fall, melting earlier in the spring, and covering less area overall.
Which is bad for animals that depend on the ice.
Terribly bad for polar bears, seals, walruses. Their whole way of life is tied to that sea ice. Interestingly, the source notes it's not all negative for all species. Some phytoplankton and fish might actually benefit from warmer waters and less ice cover.
So it's causing a major ecological shift.
A huge and complex shift, yes.
Okay, final property. Water as this solvent of life.
Water is an incredibly versatile solvent, maybe the best one we know. And guess why?
Polarity and hydrogen bonding.
You got it. Its polarity makes it excellent at dissolving other polar substances and ionic compounds.
How does it dissolve salt, for example?
Remember, salt is made of Na+ and Cl ions. When you put salt in water, the partially negative oxygen ends of water molecules are attracted to the positive sodium ions, Na+.
Okay.
And the partially positive hydrogen ends of water molecules are attracted to the negative chloride ions. The water molecules surround the individual ions, shielding them from each other. This forms hydration shells.
And that breaks the crystal apart, dissolves it.
Effectively, yes. The ions get dispersed within the water.
So anything polar or ionic tends to dissolve in water.
Generally, yes. We call substances that have an affinity for water hydrophilic water-loving. This includes ions, polar molecules like sugars, and even large molecules like proteins if they have charged or polar regions on their surface.
But some things don't dissolve in water, like oil.
Right. Those are hydrophobic substances, water-fearing. Oils and fats are non-polar. They don't have charged regions for water molecules to grab onto, and they can't form hydrogen bonds with water. So they tend to clump together, excluded by the water.
Is that hydrophobic property important in biology?
Absolutely essential. Think about cell membranes. They're largely made of hydrophobic lipid molecules. If they were hydrophilic, they'd just dissolve and cells couldn't exist. Their water-fearing nature is what allows them to form a barrier.
Wow. Okay, and related to solutions, what's molarity?
Molarity is just a standard way chemists measure the concentration of a solute dissolved in water. It's defined as the number of moles of the solute per liter of solution.
Moles, like the animal.
No. A mole is a specific, very large number, Avogadro's number, about 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd power. It's a way to count molecules or atoms. Using molarity lets scientists work with known numbers of molecules in reactions, not just masses.
Got it. Okay, one last topic related to water, acids and bases. How does water play a role here?
Well, even in pure water, a tiny fraction of water molecules can dissociate. A hydrogen atom from one water molecule can jump to another.
What does that create?
It creates a hydrogen ion, H plus A, which actually immediately attaches to another water molecule to form H3O plus A, the hydronium ion. And it leaves behind a hydroxide ion, OH.
At H plus and OH.
In pure water, the concentrations of H plus and OH are exactly equal and very low.
So what makes something an acid or a base?
An acid is any substance that increases the H plus concentration when dissolved in water. Hydrochloric acid, HCl, is a strong acid because it completely dissociates into H plus and Cl.
And a base.
A base is a substance that reduces the H plus concentration. Some bases, like ammonia, NH3, do this by directly accepting an H plus ion. Others, like sodium hydroxide, NaOH, dissociate to release OH, which then combines with H plus to form water, effectively removing H plus from the solution.
And we measure this with the pH scale.
Exactly. The pH scale is a way to express the H plus concentration more conveniently. It's logarithmic.
Logarithmic, meaning small changes in pH mean big changes in acidity.
Precisely. pH is the negative log,
Yeah.
base 10 of the H plus concentration. A pH of 7 is neutral, equal H plus and OH. Less than 7 is acidic. Greater than 7 is basic or alkaline.
And each number is a tenfold difference.
Yes. So pH 6 has 10 times more H plus than pH 7. pH 3 has 1,000 times more H plus than pH 6. It's a huge difference.
Why is controlling pH so vital for life?
Because the chemical processes inside our cells are incredibly sensitive to H plus and OH concentrations. Most cells need to maintain a pH very close to neutral, around 7. Even a slight change can disrupt enzymes and other vital molecules.
So how do organisms manage that?
With buffers. Buffers is a substance, or usually a pair of substances, that minimizes changes in pH. It acts like a chemical sponge.
How?
It can accept H plus ions when they are in excess, if the solution gets too acidic, and donate H plus ions when they've been depleted, if the solution gets too basic. Human blood is a great example. It's tightly buffered around pH 7.4 by the carbonic acid bicarbonate system.
Keeps our internal environment stable.
Critically stable, yes.
But this buffering capacity isn't infinite, right? Thinking about the environment. Ocean acidification.
That's a major concern directly related to this chemistry. Humans are releasing huge amounts of CO2 into the atmosphere by burning fossil fuels. About a quarter of that CO2 dissolves in the oceans.
And CO2 in water forms.
Carbonic acid, H2CO3. This acid then releases H plus ions, lowering the ocean's pH, making it more acidic.
And what are the consequences of lower ocean pH?
As the ocean gets more acidic, those extra H plus ions react with carbonate ions, CO3 which are dissolved in the seawater.
Okay, why does that matter?
It matters hugely because many marine organisms, like corals, clams, oysters, and lots of plankton, need those carbonate ions to build their shells and skeletons. They combine carbonate with calcium to make calcium carbonate, KCO3.
So ocean acidification reduces the available carbonate.
Exactly. The H plus basically steals the carbonate ions. Scientists predict that by 2100, the concentration of carbonate ions could decrease significantly. This makes it much harder for these organisms to build and maintain their structures.
Which threatens entire ecosystems, like coral reefs.
Yes, coral reefs are particularly vulnerable. They provide habitat for a huge amount of marine biodiversity. Ocean acidification is a serious threat to them, and many other parts of the marine food web.
Wow. So understanding basic chemistry really scales up to global environmental issues. That was quite the dive.
It really was, from subatomic particles all the way up to the global climate. It shows how chemistry isn't just some abstract subject.
No, it's literally the foundation, the rules by which life operates. The structure of water, the nature of bonds, it dictates everything.
The taste of salt, how geckos climb walls, how our own bodies buffer our blood pH, it's all chemistry in action.
So next time you see condensation on a glass, or think about photosynthesis fueling the planet, or even just take a sip of water.
Remember the incredible, intricate chemical context behind it all. The hydrogen bonds, the polarity, the reactions.
It makes you think, doesn't it? Given how interconnected and frankly how delicate some of these chemical balances are.
What's our responsibility? To understand them, yes,
Yeah.
but also maybe to protect them, especially considering things like ocean acidification. It's definitely something to ponder.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the chemical context of life. We hope you feel a bit more informed, maybe a bit more amazed by the chemical world within and around you.
Yeah, hope it sparks some curiosity.
Until next time.